Hello, friends, neighbors, and mortal enemies. Today we're back on the van.
Alright, well, I guess I'm going to do something about this floor situation. I still got a bunch of work to do on the back of the van, but what you want to do is just keep skipping around and never finish anything. Good advice for those of you who want to be unproductive. Anyways, I have no idea what's going on here. We're going to dig into this together and see just how bad it is. I haven't even really looked at any of this, so I got the seat pulled out and I'm going to get rid of all this fancy carpet and mouse nest and what have you out of here and clear some of the debris away, and we'll see what's left, and then we'll begin constructing our floor pan. I believe this is the part where we call the customer and tell them that we're in way over our heads. But anyways, I took a page from the editing department here and I cut out all the offensive content here, and it's actually not as bad as I was expecting. So frame's still good. We are going to have to patch in the doghouse basically up to this corner here, and this section is going to have to be cut out as well and replaced. Originally this floor was two pieces, so the firewall section and then the main floor pan, and there's a seam right through here. So even though we're not doing a factory correct floor pan in this, we are going to replicate that. Just it will give it a little extra strength, and it's just going to make things a little easier, I think, to break it down. So we might as well continue on with what the factory did. We are going to make a few alterations just for the sake of simplicity and just getting things done. This is not a restoration. This is a custom van that doesn't need to be 100% factory. So we're just going for strong and no holes. So we can achieve that, I think. We're also going to have to replace the section of this wheel well here. And the rest actually goes back to here. So we got, some stuff to do. I think one of the deviations we're going to make is I'm going to make this tunnel here as its own separate entity, and we'll just break it down here so it's got a flat flange on it, and then we can make our floor pan section and just spot weld it right to that flange there, and that'll just kind of simplify things. I'm just going to probably start here, cut this out, and get that put in. Here's another look at the wheel well here. You can see it's kind of gone away on us, and basically from here up to here we're gonna have to replace. So even though this still looks solid from the outside, I can tell just from looking at it that it's gonna be garbage, and on the inside it's so pitted and whatever. So we'll just cut that off, replace it from here to here, and that'll take care of all that. Anyways, no real plan here. I'm just going to dive in and start patching this up. Here's the first patch panel for the tunnel there. Pretty simple. I just cut out a piece of sheet metal, folded it by hand over top of this steel tube or whatever this is, and then just loosely broke this edge here. And as I said, the floor pan is going to sit on top of this and then spot weld on top of here. So it should be super strong, and we'll just get seam sealed, and we'll be good to go when it's all done. So I'm going to get this piece welded in now. Okay, this is this piece all welded in. I burnt it in good and hot. You can grind that down if you want. It's a floor, so who cares? Now I'd like to start patching in all this and getting this tied into here. Problem is this fits over top of the floor. So I need to actually start on the floor now, which I've decided I'm going to kind of break it down, just for no other reason other than wasting metal. So I have this back section here which has a bead in it, and I'm going to replace that about to here, and then I'll make the rest of the floor as one piece. Only reason for that is I'm just trying not to waste metal, because if I make this whole one piece, then I'm gonna have a weird growth in the middle of the metal I cut out, and it's basically just wasted metal at that point. So I'll just put in a small piece here, weld across through here, call it done and save myself a little bit of material cost. Here's our floor piece all completed. You're probably going to want to know how I made that, or maybe you don't, but I'm going to tell you anyways. So what we did here is we put this bead detail in it, which is in the floor, and we kind of got a reasonable replication of that. So all I did is I went over to the bead roller here, and I offset my step dies there. So I set it up so they're offset a bit, so it has more of a angle going into it, so I could replicate that factory bead. And then I just ran it through the bead roller there to put that step in. And when I'm putting a fairly heavy step into something, I usually sneak up on it, so I do it in 2 stages. First stage, do it light, then crank it down and go through it the second stage to get the full bead into it. But that's a pretty tall bead there. So and then once I did that, you obviously can't quite get into the corners to tune them up. So from the factory, this is a very square thing into it, and again, this is a floor, so we're not super concerned with any of it, but you know, just for the sake of whatever, I just take a chisel, knock the corners all around so it gives it a sharper edge. Same on the inside, I flipped it over, knocked these corners into it with a chisel, and just finishes it off a little better. Again, this is getting covered and whatever, so we don't care, but you know, we might as well while we're here. This is going to be the only deviation from factory. Is originally there was a flange on the doghouse that spot welded onto here, but because that was rotted away, all I did is I just broke this edge up and then kind of folded it, hammered it, and beat it using a bunch of crude methods just to get this step into it. And I'm just going to weld this, splice it in right to the side of the doghouse, and that'll be good and strong there. And then all we did here is just took it over the brake and just folded this edge down to 90 degrees. And this is what's going to spot weld onto the side of our wheel well. So pretty simple patch. I've also got all the holes drilled for plug welding it to the frame rail. Typically when you're setting something up for plug welding, I like to space them about 2 inches apart as a general rule. Now on modern cars, they have a specific formula and whatever that you have to follow when you're plug welding something, but on these old cars, the original spot welds are so inconsistent, I just go usually 2 inches or whatever, and it seems like a pretty good spacing. It keeps everything good and strong. Anything more than that and you're just making more work for yourself. Anything less than that and it's not as strong. So this should be all good here. Only other thing I'll mention is you notice I sanded it. It's not to make it look nice. I don't care what it looks like. The reason I sand it is because stuff like this is hard to prep after you go to put it in. So you want to kind of plan ahead. If it's going to be a pain to get to, prep it all beforehand. Weld it in, then it's prepped. All you have to do is clean the welds up, paint it, and you're done. So the thing with these projects is they don't get more fun as you go on, so I try to get all the really horrible stuff out of the way as I go, because otherwise then morale drops and nothing ever gets done. So I'm going to get this piece welded in. I'll show you what I mean where I'm welding it into here, and we'll come back when that's all ready to go. Okay, we got this patch all spliced in here. You can see we burnt it all in pretty good and hot. We're not concerned about warping and stuff like this. We just want to get a good weld on it. So you see what I mean there about splicing this edge in to the doghouse. I just spliced that in along here. We also started patching in our wheel arch here. This is just a flat piece of metal. I just welded it in. Again, we're not grinding any of these welds down. Be a waste of time, I think. And I'll have to go and reconstruct this. We also did have to go back and re-weld the wheel tub to the actual floor pan, because believe it or not, this side, it looked like it had never even been welded right from factory. Like there were dimples for spot welds, but they had never actually connected to anything. So it was just hanging in the wind, which is pretty hard to believe, because the shock and everything else is mounted to that. So it was just flapping there for, the past 50 years. not really doing anything. So we got it all re-welded on. Got this patch in here, so this is all kind of stabilizing now. I was gonna start on the floor, but I think I'm gonna reconstruct this part of the wheel well now, and then that's totally done. And then from there, I'll get my floor all templated out, and we can start on that. Okay, well, what did I do here? I made a paper template of the floor. You want to get this pretty accurate because otherwise you're going to be trimming the metal a whole bunch. So, you know, take your time on this, get it close. Then I transferred that onto a piece of 18 gauge sheet metal, and I added a little edge here because this is going to end up getting tipped down to weld to the wheelhouse. The rest of this is all pretty straightforward. We did some forensic reconstruction here and have established that our the location of our master cylinder door, which we're not going to use the exact same plate as it did from factory, but you know, we want it at least in the right spot. So we figured out where that needed to be. There's enough left of this to kind of establish those dimensions. Same thing with this. Hard to tell, but there's a couple of beads here, and we were able to kind of piece them back together, figure out our spacing. So we got this all laid out here. The rest of the panel is just flat. So I'm going to start out by putting a step down into this, and I'm going to make it slightly bigger than what it was originally, just so we have a little room for air. You know, again, we're not going factory on this, so it doesn't really matter, but I do want, you know, still have not, you know, if this is off by like an inch or whatever, we're going to be in trouble. But you know, we're going to open it up, you know, maybe another 1/4 inch or so, just so we got a little wiggle room there. So I'll start with this, and then we'll put a couple beads in here. There's the step dies in our bead roller. This is just a cheapo Eastwood bead roller that I welded some crap onto the back to kind of reinforce it. Nothing fancy, not the greatest thing in the world. Other thing, these things come with a crank on it. Throw that in the garbage and buy yourself a steering wheel, weld it on. Way better. Anyways, we're just going to use our step dies. This is going to put a bump in the metal. We're not doing like as deep as the factory, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to step it, and then I'm just going to put a flat piece of sheet metal in for the master cylinder cover, so we don't need to get too carried away there. But we do want to put a little recess into it just for strength, so that's what we'll do. I think I already showed this tool in action when I was building the wheel arches and stuff, so we won't get too carried away with that. But we'll come back when we got a little step put in that thing. Alright, there's the step all stepped in there. Like I said, I'm just going to make a plate that fits in here. Probably bolts down with 2 bolts, one at the front, one at the back, and that'll seal that up. So next step is we have to put these 2 beads in here. So to put the other beads in, we're just going to use these round dies in the bead roller. I don't have the exact size that the factory used, but because this is custom, we can do whatever we want. Technically, I could put whatever design I want into here. It just needs something for a little extra strength, but I don't feel like being creative, so we're just going to put 2 straight beads in it, just like the factory did, except not the same size, but who cares? I know I don't. So we'll get these beads pressed into here. Now, with these round beads, it is a good idea to pre-stretch the area in the English wheel again. But as we did before, we're not going to do that. We're just going to hammer them in and hope for the best. There's our 2 beads rolled in there, and you can see there's really no warping or anything. It's pretty straight beads, so you know there wasn't a whole lot of risk of things getting out of hand. But if you see these ends here, they're not finished off the greatest. So a little trick for finishing these off: we'll flip it over and put a dolly on the back side like so, and then I've got just an old Chevy spring bushing here, and I'm just going to put it right on the end here, open side facing in, and then we'll just take a hammer, give it a quick hit, and then that'll finish that edge off really nice. So you can see it just finishes the end of the bead off a little nicer. If you look at this one, can see there's quite a bit of surface deflection all through here, but as soon as you finish that off, it straightens it itself all out, and also helps with any distortion or whatever that you have in the panel. So if you're doing a lot of this, it would definitely pay to make a dedicated tool for this. All you really need is a piece of steel tube, cut half of it off, and sharpen it up, and there you go. Well, we got all our beads in now and all tuned up there. So next step is we have to bend this, and we need to cut this hole out. So let's actually start by cutting this hole out. That would make sense. Sure. Well, we got out the old Saskatchewan hole saw here and got this thing trimmed out. So I'll just take a chisel and break this all apart and tune it up with the grinder, and then we'll have a hole here. Oh, the old Saskatchewan hole saw works pretty good, eh? Now we gotta deal with this edge. It's gotta get bent down at a 90-degree angle. So once again, why not? We're getting pretty predictable at this point. We're just gonna take our all 16ths again and crank that edge down, and we'll come back and evaluate it when we get it bent down. Okay, you can see we bent this edge down, and it's all curled up into a hot mess here. So this indicates that I'm going to have to stretch this area, which will add more material here, which will then bring this down flat again. And you can see it's actually curved all the way through here, so we'll have to do a couple stretches here. Just going to use the Lancaster stretcher for that. Cram it in there and go to town. That's going to be a bit tricky. Alright, well, I'm going to fight with this and we'll come back. We've already seen this about 1,000,000 times by now, so. And there it is all ready to weld in. The only other thing I did to it is I broke this edge to 90 degrees because that's what the factory floor pan did. I guess it just gives it a little extra strength. So we did that, and that's all good to go. In case you're wondering, we do paint the underside of everything. Kind of pointless to do all this work and leave the backside bare metal. Also, this is something that kind of gets overlooked a lot, but before we paint anything, we clean the whole thing with wax and grease remover, and then we sand it with 80 grit so that the paint will stick to it. All this metal comes with quite a bit of oil on it, and so you want to get all that cleaned off and prepped really good. Obviously, paint doesn't stick to oil, and also doesn't stick to smooth, shiny metal, so we just rough it up a bit and make sure the paint sticks. Once it's all welded in, we'll come back from the underside and probably undercoat it all. There's the floor all barbecued in. Just spot welded it, or plug welded it all along where the frame is and where the pedal brace thingy is, and then plug welded it there. Seam welded it there. And plug welded it in here, and then I did a little bit of seam welding just for a little extra strength. I can't remember if I showed this wheel art. I just kind of bent it and formed it and twisted it and whatever. It just hammered it around basically, so it didn't get too fancy there, and then welded it in. Next step is I have to build this. So for that, all I did is I took a piece of metal, broke it at a 90, and it's gonna plug weld onto the floor. So what I'll have to do to get it to curve around here is I'm gonna have to stretch this area using my Lancaster stretcher, and then it'll kind of snake around there. And then here I'm gonna have to do a bunch of shrinking, which is gonna pull it, you know, like that. And then we'll get that hammered in there and welded. I'll start out by stretching the corner. Hard to do with one hand, but I find when you're doing this, it's easiest just to do a little at a time, check it, do a little, check it, rather than go crazy, because then you're going to have to go back and forth and between the shrinker and the stretcher, and what will end up happening is the metal will eventually crack, which you kind of want to avoid. You can see that's starting to bend. Well, check it there. We've got quite a bit of stretch to do in this corner. Maybe it'll be easier if you hold it like this and kind of see what's happening. Anyways, you get the idea. I'm just going to keep messing around with that. I will have to bend this upper piece by hand because it's not going to carry this much material all the way through. So what I'll do there is I just got a rounded dolly, and we'll just this is really hard to do with one hand. Just hold it there. Oh, come on. Hold it there and we'll just kind of help that along. See, that's starting to match up. So we'll just keep working at stretching this edge and hammering it around, and it should conform to what we want. So I got this edge mostly curved around there to what I think it's going to need to be, or at least close. So now we were using the stretcher before, but now this has to kick out at quite an angle, as you can see there. So that means we're going to have to use the shrinker, which is going to pull this metal together. This was tearing it apart. This was pulling it together. So what I did is I just drew out the basic shape here on a piece of paper, and now I can use that as my map while I'm using the shrinker, so I know when I've got enough curve in it. This is pretty dramatic, so it could almost use a slice and pie cut here, but we're going to try to get it with the shrinker anyways. See, here's our shrinker as it's been labeled, just in case we forget. Just jam that in there. See, that's starting to kick out there. So that metal's being pulled together. I'm just going to keep at this here, and then we'll come back when I get it close. There it is, all ready to weld in. You can see I had to stretch it a little bit here to get it to curve back around, and then we were able to get all this into here with shrink. And then just to help it along, I just took a chisel and bashed this corner in. So I'm going to punch a few holes in here for plug welding, and then I'll get this seam here all spliced in, and we'll come back when it's all welded. And that's all welded in. Like I said, I'm not grinding any of this. It's just getting seam sealed, and then this will get covered with probably some kind of sound deadener heat shield and carpet and whatever else, so kind of waste time. Only thing I ground is where I spliced the two sections of floor together, just so it doesn't look all patchy or whatever. Last thing I did is I just cut a little oval there for the master cylinder cover. I was going to do like a weld nuts on the bottom and do like a bolt on both ends, but then I figured, you know, how often do you check your brake fluid anyways? If you're like me, you don't check it until you crash through the neighbor's lilac bushes on a Sunday. So what it is, I ran a couple self-tappers in there, and then I also tack welded a plate on the bottom, so the self-tappers actually have something thicker to bite into, and that'll be just fine. Next up is we're going to tackle this front section. So got quite a bit of reconstruction there. Still got to figure out the gas pedal. Think I got it figured out, but we'll see. We'll try and get it all working. It's seized up right now, so you know, looks like we got a little pedestal to build there for that, and the rest of this should all be pretty simple. So I got the floor cut out here, and logic would dictate that I should probably get this all sorted out here and get the pedal figured out before I close it all in, but that's not how my brain works. My brain says, hey, we should get rid of this giant hole because it's easy. So I'm going to do that first, and then I'm going to struggle with that after. So I started out by cutting this piece out, and now I'm going to stick it in the brake, and I'm going to bend this edge to whatever angle this is, and that should give us a pretty good head start. Okay, I got the edge bent here, and next step is I have to bend about an 1/8 inch lip all the way around this opening here, give it a little extra strength. So I think you probably all guessed this by now, but I'm gonna get out the all 16ths and just tweak that over, and we'll come back when that's all tidied up. That's all she wrote for this panel. Pretty simple. I'm gonna get it all prepped up and smash some holes in it for plug welds, and then we'll clean up and paint the backside, and it'll be all ready to weld in. So we got the bed tuned up here, and those of you who are new viewers or whatever, all I did is I took the crescent wrench here and I just put it over and just cranked on it and folded it over little by little at a time. And then when it was close, I just took the hammer and dolly and just smashed it all around, and that gives you a nice rolled edge on there. I actually thought I screwed up on this radius because it's different than this one. Then I looked at the old panel, and for whatever reason it's the same, so that'll be fine. Should also mention that this thing no longer has a clutch pedal. It's got an automatic in it now, so we don't need to worry about any of that. So I guess we'll come back when this is all welded in. Sure. Oh, there's the floor all welded in, and now we gotta turn our attention to this nightmare here. So I made a little paper template, or template for you Italians, and you know, we'll go cut that out and then start figuring out how it's going to go in there, and how we're going to get the gas pedal on here. So I transferred our template onto a piece of metal and got it all cut out, and this edge is going to go and fold up this way, but then our two sides of the platform are going to have to fold down. So in order to kind of compensate for everything, I'm going to stretch right here and right here, and that's just going to help to bring this corner up after we fold it. So we're kind of just compensating for that now. And to stretch it, I'm just going to go back to our stretcher here as it's labeled, and stick it in there and just run it through a bit, and just kind of crank on it and see what happens. We're just trying to plan ahead a bit here. Never hurts. Sorry for the filming, it's really hard to do this. Operate the foot pedal and do this at the same time. I think you get the idea. Maybe not. You can see that's starting to... This will focus. Focus! I command you to focus. There you go. You see how that's starting to turn up? Okay, every time I turn it, it doesn't want to focus. Well, you get the idea. It's turning up on the end there, which is what we want. So I'm going to stretch this a bit more. I don't really know how much it's going to need, but you know, whatever. We'll just keep going at it. Okay, so what I did here is I did a bunch of stretch in this area, and then I ended up shrinking in this corner, because you can see there's a big pile up of metal here where it kind of dishes in here, so we know that that's gonna have to shrink. I didn't actually have to do anything here really, but I did. So you know, I don't have any plan here. I'm just throwing stuff at the wall and seeing if it'll stick. So now we kind of got some pre something or other going on here. You see it's gonna doing stuff. So now we're going to screw that all up, and I'm going to start put this in the brake, and I'm going to put it in the brake, and I'm going to make these 2 bends here to start the pedestal, or whatever you want to call this. So that'll go down like that, and that'll go down like that, and that'll get us our initial shape, and then we can fold the returns back. Okay, well, I broke the sides and whatever, got that kind of close. You can see this is all flattened out here again and messed up. So what I need to do is I need to start hammering this edge back up and seeing what it's going to do for me. So try not to make a mess here. Well, as you can see, we've kind of jumped into the future here, and I kind of got ahead of myself. But this ended up being pretty simple here. I just bent this edge back up using the all 16ths and the bench vise, and I had to do a little more shrinking and stretching to get it to conform. And what I did when I bent it up is I bent it further back than what I needed to, and then I trimmed out this original rusted raised up section, but I left the tunnel itself intact, and then I got this into position, and then I screwed it down with sheet metal screws, and then I just took a hammer and I beat this until it was into the correct profile of the tunnel there. And once it was within range, I went ahead and trimmed the tunnel back, and then welded it all in, and then glorped in some seam sealer. Didn't bother grinding anything down or anything, so that worked out okay. Again, this is all getting covered with sound deadener and carpet and everything else, so doesn't really matter too much. We just want to get it solid again. And then to get the pedal in, that was pretty simple too. Turns out the linkage and everything, somebody had really messed around with it in the past, so it's pretty messed up. But the pedal now works. See, it does its thing, so that's good. And all I did there is I just capped it off with a piece of plate, and then spliced in the pedal section, and that all worked out fairly easily. There was really only one place where the pedal could go, and so got lucky there, I guess. Didn't have to mess around with that too much. And then this cover here, as you remember, was rusted away, and the upper section was still intact. So all I did is I just welded in a flat piece of metal in for the bottom. Again, sheet metal screwed it down, good enough, and got ourselves a floor. So that's pretty simple, nothing too complicated there, and solid. And we'll put some carpet and whatever on it, and you'll never know it was rusted out. So sorry for skipping ahead there, but there really wasn't a whole lot to show there anyway. So I know an explanation isn't going to be enough, so I can already hear the audience collectively screaming that they've been gypped and their time's been wasted. So I decided to waste this $200 piece of metal to give you a dramatic reenactment of how this was created. So there you go. This is about where we left off, I think, before I had to skip ahead here and get things done. Well, now that we got things done, we got a couple of minutes to waste, and I'll just run you through the final steps of creating this. Now, probably the easiest way to tackle this would be to just slice it here, 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 and then go ahead and fold each of these sections up individually, and then weld them all back together, and then call it a day. But you know, that would be too easy, so I'm just gonna jam this thing in the vise here and just start forcing it out, which is of course gonna flatten all this out again, which is gonna create a bunch of more hammering and messing about. Really a real waste of time, you know, but that's what we're here for. Now what we got here is a real mess, see? I folded this edge up higher than it needs to be. It's more of a relaxed angle. But I folded it up like that. Now it's a little flattened out and just become an absolute disaster. So how are we going to fix this? Well, now I have to go back over to the shrinker stretcher. And I'm going to stretch here. I'm going to shrink here. Get this all kind of lined. Then I'm going to hammer on it. Then I'm going to yell at it. I'm going to start out with a stretcher here. And get this stretched back into shape. A little bit through here. Can't possibly make it any worse. Or maybe we can. It's always part of the challenge. Can we make it worse or can we make it better? And if we make it worse, does anyone really care? Do I care? Not really. Hey, now we're going to go over to the shrinker and I'm going to shrink this corner, and then that'll help bring this all back flat again, and then we can hammer on it some more and hopefully end up with something that resembles what we were trying to create. If it doesn't turn into what we want, we can always just make it into a happy little bird or a tree. Okay, kind of get in there. I think the best thing we can do now is just start beating on it some more with a hammer, and we'll call it good. Hey, well, this is obviously just a demonstration, so I'm not going to waste a whole bunch of time. You can spend as much time as you want hammering on this and smoothing it all out. But you see we got the basic shape hammered into it. And let's just use our imaginations here and pretend that there's like our floor under here. So all I did is I took 4 sheet metal screws and screwed this piece onto the floor. So here, 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 here. And then as you can see, we obviously, like I said, we bent this edge up further than what we needed. And this is our center hump in the floor, or transmission cover. Well, it's not really a transmission cover in this van, but it kind of looks like one, so we'll just call it that. And you can see obviously there's the misalignment there. So once I had it screwed down to the main floor that we had previously built, what I did is I took my hammer and just beat this edge until it sat flat with this, and then I went back and I trimmed this piece to fit this, and then I just welded it all in. So pretty simple. Even though like this edge around here was rotted on this, I was still able, there's still enough there where I could use it as kind of a hammer form or whatever you want to call it, just to get this piece into the right shape. So that's the way we tackled that. As far as the gas pedal goes, I played around with it, and there was really only one place where it would fit. So all I did is I just plated this end off and then just mounted the gas pedal assembly there, and that all worked out just fine. Now if you're one of those people who likes to plan ahead or whatever, or work smarter or not harder, what you could have done is when you made your template for this, you could have just made a little flap on here, left this long, and then broke that down, and then all you would have had to do is weld these 2 sides, and then that would have been enough to plate that off. But you probably didn't do that because you were following along with it step by step, and now you got to weld it all the way around here just like I had to. So sorry about that, but hopefully this explanation was helpful, and I didn't just waste $300 worth of sheet metal. come to my attention, I didn't show this part of the wheel tub being made either, but this was actually like super simple as well. Basically used the same technique as what I did, I just demonstrated on this piece. I just, even though it was rotted and thin up to here, there's still enough left there. So I did is I just cut a piece of metal big, and obviously I did that before I put the floor in. It was easier to do that with the floor out of the way. And this was all just a flat piece of metal, and I just basically clamped it or screwed it here, and then just kind of hammered it and formed it over top of the old piece. And there's a bit of a curve here, so I just hammered that in, and then all through here, this was just a flat piece that we had already welded in, so I just joined on the corner and held a dolly on the inside and just kind of smacked it around. Pretty simple, and hopefully that helps anyone out with doing floors. I don't know. There you go.